Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of RV Business Capital Talk, sponsored by Excel. I'm Rick Kessler from RV Business, and with me, as always, Sherman Goldenberg from RV Business. And joining the two of us today is a familiar face, Frank Tamburrini. Frank, of course, is the general manager at IDS. IDS is one of the leading dealer management software providers to the RV industry and the dealers in particular. Frank, so thank you so much for joining us. I love the background photo.
Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you, and I always try to change up the background photo to have a little fun. And sometimes we're too busy, doing our work. Sometimes we need to sit back and have a little fun too.
So you're not really sitting in a motorhome?
I would wish I was, but no, it's just a virtual background.
Before we hit the record button, Frank was telling us that a snow squall ran through Toronto, where he's located, just a bit ago. So I'd be surprised if the picture outside those windows is accurate, but it's good to imagine nonetheless.
I definitely wouldn't be wearing a t-shirt right now in Toronto.
Well, Frank, we're talking to you on the mid-December, and the holidays are approaching. The first of the year is right after that, and everybody's crystal ball is getting polished to the best that it can for a 2024 forecast. From your perspective, what are you guys seeing?
What we're seeing is basically what the trend is showing, is that the market is definitely going back to a 2015, 2000, maybe 16 level of 320,000 units. But the way I look at it, though, is, a dealership is actually comprised of many different businesses within that business. You've got unit sales, you've got F&I, you've got service, parts, maybe rentals or storage. So, any slowdown in the industry, it really gives dealers the opportunity to really focus on the other areas of their business that need some improvement, need some tweaking. You can optimize your cash flow, improve your profits. So although it is going to be back to more a traditional, year, I think there's still lots of opportunity for dealers to really focus on improving their business.
That's probably the key word there, is opportunity. There's always an opportunity, some better than others. But like you said, people have time now to take a look at, behind the curtains, peel back the curtain and see what needs some attention, right?
Exactly. And that's why, in our trends reports and analytics that we try to put out there, that's one of the reasons why we put this information out, is to spark an idea, spark discussion and conversation with the dealers. The dealers can then have those conversations with their leadership team and their staff members, because there's a lot of different things that they could be really looking at right now. It's all about revenue by department. Everyone's looking at their expenses. So you don't want to have to always rely on running through a laundry list of different reports. Sometimes you just need that information at your fingertips so that you can actually make those game time decisions. And you don't have to wait necessarily for the end of the month or the end of the quarter to make those decisions. Sometimes you need that information on a daily basis. Aged inventory right now is probably a challenge that many dealers are dealing with. And the longer those older units sit there, the longer they're paying for them if they got floor plan. Yep. So having that information on a daily basis can really empower their sales team to say, okay, we really need to move these units off our lots, and it provides kind of focus on where they should pay attention to.
You issue trends reports how often?
Every month.
And they're based on what? I mean, how do you collect the info?
A lot of it are the data that's kind of collected through the IDS system. We can it's all anonymous, but we can see different trends that are happening in the industry, unit sales, different things, cycle times in the service area. And then we kind of sit around the table and analyze the data and say, okay, what would all our dealers and the industry as a whole, and even if you're not an IDS dealer, what would they benefit from these reports? And we put it out every month.
And what are the headlines emerging from these trend reports recently?
Yeah, I think recently a lot of it is about getting your analytics strategy in place so that you can really focus on what's important. You know, when you're busy, when you're selling a ton of units, you're making a lot of money, it sometimes you don't have the time or even sometimes the inclination to actually dig into those problems. But now that things are slower and getting those analytics are, you know, easier than they used to be, now is actually the time to do it. I think the other thing that's kind of changing is the demographics. You know, I think every generation, you know, it wants to be treated maybe slightly different than the previous generation. And that's not a good or a bad thing, but it's really about knowing what's important to those generations and those future buyers. You know, some people absolutely want that phone call. You know, if you got to call me to tell me that, you know, something's going on with my unit and explain it to me, and I want to talk to you. Some people, like a good friend of mine, actually disabled his voicemail so that nobody can leave him a voicemail. His voicemail actually says, "Please text me. If you know me, text me. Otherwise, I'm out." So, you know, and that could be true in either generation. So I think the most important thing is about personalization. You can't always generalize. You also need to get to know who your customers are and understand how they want to interact with you. Some people want just that quick text. Some people want that call. So really getting to know your customers and how you can't do that at scale. You obviously can't know everybody on a first name basis, especially if they only come in once or they're just kind of kicking tires. But I think that's where tools are there to help you. You know, putting in information, and nobody likes to put in information because it's more work, but really they can really benefit from that information if they've put in, yeah, Rick or Sherman came in, they were looking at this particular unit. You know, Rick mentioned he's got 3 kids. Okay, so you probably need, you know, multiple different bedrooms. You know, technology is important to them. So all that information are tidbits so that when Rick or Sherman comes back in or inquires about something, you know, that salesperson can review that record and say, I'm going to mention Rick's got 3 kids, and I think I have a really great unit that I think they can use.
Frank, indulge me for just a quick moment. I want to take a step back or two. We've mentioned analytics many times when we talk with you, and we all just assume that we know what that means.
Sure.
What are some analytics that a dealer ought to be aware of? Maybe an example or two that, you know, everybody goes, you know, year over year sales volume and things like that. But what are some of the analytics that you think are pretty essential?
Sure. I think some of the important ones, and one that I kind of mentioned, is revenue by department. So although you can kind of track in a lot of systems that, hey, I made, you know, $100, it's really important to really understand how much money did you actually make per department? How much did you expect to make in those departments? And are there any deficiencies? So, you know, like we talked about, is there's a different departments, parts and service, and maybe you've got a rentals business. So I think it's really important to keep track of that. Obviously, expenses is one of the most important ones, especially when it's tied to cash flow. Do you have the money to be able to cover those expenses as interest rates have continued to go up? The other area on analytics around service, and we're finding a lot of people are very interested in, is around mechanics. You know, that's one of their biggest investments, and that's one of their areas where they can make a lot of money. But there's different ways that you can evaluate. You know, there's productivity, there's efficiency, and it all depends on, you know, what that mechanic is putting into the system. So
Sure.
I'll give you an example. You know, if the mechanic is there for 8 hours and they've worked 8 hours, is that good or is that bad? It sounds good. Yeah, they worked 8 hours, but really when you look down into the analytics part, you can kind of see that although that mechanic worked 8 hours, they really only billed for 6. So there's 2 hours lost there. Now, 2 hours is not a big deal on a per day, on a one-day basis. But if you're losing 2 hours per work order, compounded, and some of our dealers are doing, you know, thousands of work orders a month, that's all lost revenue. So the way I would look at it is analytics is that layer deeper into your business to show problems or potential opportunities that you can work on.
Okay. It's now back to the most recent trends report. Any other takeaways from that you wanted to pass along?
Yeah, I think the other one that we get asked a lot, and it's kind of in the trends report too, is, what other technology or what could we be doing better to improve our business? And it's kind of a funny story. So one of the things that we've done at IDS is spent, especially in the last year, getting back into the dealership. You can't design good software if you're just sitting behind at a desk all day. So our teams are visiting customers, they're visiting non-customers, and we're really trying to get close to those customers to really understand what they go through on a day-to-day basis. And one day, one of our people was watching something happening in the parts area and in the service area, and they asked the question, it's like, what's that paper form that you just filled out? And I said, well, the technician said, this is what I'm using to request a part. But what happens is, that technician has to take time, walk it all the way to the desk. The parts person then kind of looks it up, and if they have it, they'll bring it over. And our person got an idea saying, well, wait a minute, if the technician's working on the roof of the RV, they then have to get all the way down, write something on paper, write it all over, and paper kind of gets lost. So I think one of the areas where we've tried to help is, no matter what the tech is doing, whether they're on top of the unit or under the unit, they can quickly just pull up their phone and request a part. Now, if they don't know the exact part number, they can take a picture of it and send it to the parts desk. Now the person is bringing the part there. They kept working or doing something slightly different. Now you've actually improved that, maybe that 2 hours that were lost before, you've now made it 1 hour. And eventually you're going to get the full impact.
That's a good example. Yeah. And every little bit helps. So it's just keep piling it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other area where we get asked a lot of questions is really, where should we expand? Should we expand our service department? Should we expand our parts department or even sales? And it's hard to give a prescription answer because it's very dependent on the dealer and maybe even where they're located. But really what we say is, analyze where your units are coming from or where your sales are. With analytics now, you can actually see on a map, here's where the people that have bought a unit come from.
Yeah.
And if you happen to notice there's a cluster in an area that you didn't know you were servicing, you can consider, maybe there's an option to expand there. I think the other areas is, parts and service and profitability in those areas. So before you expand, it's probably more important to really understand, are you making money and enough money in the areas that you currently have? If it's not true, then try to fix those areas and then look to expand those parts.
One of the more recent times that we actually saw each other face to face was out at Paris, Las Vegas for the RV Dealers Convention Expo. That's always a great opportunity for people such as yourself to get in front of your customers. Just anecdotally, what were some of those conversations like with the dealers?
Sure. I think the theme across the board is, people are seeing higher floor plan costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a challenge. Expense management is really important for them right now. On the flip side, we are starting to see that we're not that as busy as we used to. And so we're going to use this as actually an opportunity to improve our business. And I'm not sure if I showed you at the event, we actually launched our, what we call leadership dashboards, which essentially arms, a dealership's leadership team with all the information that we think you need in order to make good decisions. And people loved it. And they wanted to see more of it. They wanted to sign up for it because people really are starving for that next level of analytics to improve their business.
So that dashboard is part of your software system. It's,
That's right.
Boot up the machine and there it is showing right in their face.
That's right. Yeah. And the difference is it's you can consume it wherever you like. You can view it on your phone. Some of our dealers, we joke around with them that when you're in the Bahamas sitting on the beach, you can check your cash flow at no problem. You can view it on tablets but the best part is you can actually bring it with you to your team and in a meeting.
Okay.
And you can actually start drilling down. So just looking at a report, helps. But really the power is if you notice a problem, you can just drill down into that area and say, okay, now I'm understanding what's going on. These particular things happened, and that's why this number is good or bad.
And that's what it's all about. Provide them the information and let them make the analysis.
That's right. We try to give you all the information that we think you need in order to make good decisions. But really it's up to, the dealer and the team to then, take action.
Okay.
One of my, my top takeaway from this conversation is going to be your comments about next year and a resumption of a pace you're saying that kind of reflects 15, 16, you said?
Something around there. Yeah, when we looked at the trends, it seems to be tracking around that period.
And do you see this for an industry at large as manageable?
I think so. I think it's really going to come down to, expense management, making sure you understand and taking care of your customer, which are things that, our dealers want to do and do regardless of the environment or the macro environment that's happening.
Is it safe to assume, and Frank, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but when we have conversations with people in the industry, dealers and suppliers and manufacturers alike, anyone who's been around for any length of time is going to say, this is a cyclical industry. We're going to get through this. We're going to come out of it better off. You're getting those same comments from your dealer partners?
We definitely are, especially the ones that, will say, yeah, we've seen this before. We actually have a playbook, whether it's written down or in their minds. Their parents, maybe they took over their dealership before, has gone through this, will pass down that information. Because, when times are slow, there's also opportunities out there. So dealers are buying inventory from other dealers. They're looking to expand and acquire. So there's many different options that they can be looking at. And I think the ones that see this as an opportunity will capitalize on it.
We can't let you go without this final question, and I'm not asking you to spill the beans too much, but what are you guys working on? What can we expect from IDS going forward?
Sure. I think what you can expect is a lot of what we've probably been doing the last couple of years. So we're spending much more time in the dealership, watching and seeing how they've evolved and want to evolve. And I think really where we're going to focus is finding those areas that are still a pain point and helping those dealers. So, we've probably only scratched the surface on analytics. So we're going to continue down that path to make sure that you don't have to rely on a team of people your accountant to crunch all those numbers all the time. You'll have that information at your fingertips. We want to eliminate the need of paper documents so that paper doesn't get lost. It's not efficient. You can do everything through your system. And I think keep making dealers more efficient and more productive because, I think the more productive and efficient our dealers are, the better they can compete in the market.
I would conclude myself by saying how jealous I am of the weather that you have there in Toronto. And we could only wish to do as well.
Yeah. Frank, again, awesome talking with you every time. Thank you for taking time out this afternoon to sit with us. And if we don't see you beforehand, we'll see you next week sometime. Who knows?
Sounds good. It's always a pleasure talking to you too, and have a great holiday.
Thanks, you too.